Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, it is time. It is time to begin a coaching time. It is time for us to study. It's time for us to learn. It's time for us to investigate how to build more stuff. We have a special student for us today, Mr. TBO Baggins himself. So let's learn how to take a third base and defense it. Come on. Come on, let's go. So it begins. TBO Baggins.
Hello, hello.
What's up, dude?
How you doing?
Surprisingly well for being sick. How are you?
Good.
Let's kick ass and have some
All right.
bubble gum. I see the replays. If
Yeah, I
you have-
emailed them to you, or I can. We can just do them in game, I guess. And host them.
Yeah, do that. This saves a step.
Yeah. Okay.
Number one, I see one ZvP and two ZvTs. Into email. Promote to lobby host. Okay. Well, to start, I see 16-bit and I say, uh-oh, range liberators.
So I've got some small notes with each one. This one, basically, an easy summary is from when I watched it. I felt like I macroed well, although I could have spent my money a little bit better. Basically, once he hit me, I had way too much in the bank, and I should have been more prepared. But
One little note about dealing with Terran as opposed to Protoss is they tend to have more of a crisp plan for denying your fourth base when you try to take it. So there's a difference there between often in ZvP, it's time to take a base, so you take a fourth. Whereas against Terran, they have a bunch of pressure timings where sometimes if you take the fourth, they'll just insta-kill it. So it's better to bird in hand versus two in the bush, just take a macro hatch. And that can happen really early. I looked in Rogues games, and I've been doing this myself. Around 6 minutes, macro hatch is a pretty normal time. So a couple little benchmarks, 6-minute macro hatch. This is assuming there wasn't something really silly that happened in the early game. And then 8 minutes, 8:30, fourth base.
this one's obviously been particularly troublesome for me just due to they can drop me so easily. And for a while there, I wasn't sure if I should take that top base or take the pocket natural, but I found myself taking the pocket first, and then they could just hold me in. But yeah, I can get to 3 bases, and then, like you're saying, trying to move to that fourth, depending on how they're doing, it can be pretty difficult for me.
So that Reaper really messed you up. It's
Yeah.
a pretty skill-based moment in the matchup, and I think a lot of times when I face a Terran, I can tell approximately what their MMR is just by the way the first Reaper plays out. Like a much better player is going to get more value from it. A worse player is more likely to lose it. And the subtle change that can happen is when they disrupt you, they don't kill anything, but they really cause you to mess up your progression. So you got a supply block and a bunch of lost mining time because of the Reaper. If you have 6 lings, your drones shouldn't really move. Like as you get up the ladder, fewer and fewer Terrans are going to go through the worker line like that. So that's kind of a habit that might work against players who are at or below your skill level, but players above your skill level, it's not going to work. So it's probably best to not do it. You can if you want to. I know Isul tends to try to tackle Reapers.
I've started to notice that, depending on the map, but if my lings are off creep like that without speed, it's just a joke, and I kind of have to wait for them to come to me because it's exactly that. They're just trying to disrupt me, not necessarily. If I do it right, they shouldn't get the kills, or at least not many. But
so that 30 Overlord is the trickiest one because that's when the Reaper arrives. Super important, Reaper. Distracting. Cool. Another thing you can experiment with too is you don't always have to do a double inject, especially on a map like this that has tons of area that you need to creep.
Mm-hmm.
You can do one inject, one creep tumor, because you're going to make 2 more queens anyway at some point.
Yeah, typically I'll make the my first queen, my second queen, and I'll queue up the third. I'll get one inject with my natural queen, and then I'll move them down and drop that tumor, and it's usually in time for that third queen to be able to get the next inject.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yeah, right about there, but...
Oh. The Reaper spared the drone. So, Baneling Nest. Did you see something that made you decide to do that?
I don't remember, honestly. I don't remember if I had scouted the double gas on this right away or not.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm still learning how to scout and what to read correctly. I think I've noticed, I've been trying to do a lot of drone scouting, but I think I send it out too early.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I can just tell whether or not if it's, if they're going to drop that tech lab or not.
If you want to build to do blind, you can do 3-minute 40 Bane Nest. Well, we'll say 3-minute to 3:30 third base, which is pretty important. 3:40 Bane Nest and 4:30 Lair. That's kind of the all-around. You get the tools in the game to not die.
Mm-hmm.
If they're going to do Heckbats against you, you'll have Banelings in time. If they're going to go for Banshee or Liberator range, you're going to have your Lair in time. So it's a pretty versatile opening. A lot of these small things we're pointing out, they're not really loud moments in the game, but if you're looking at like moving up multiple leagues, they are holding you back, especially if you add up all of them together. So you have like the lost mining time, the late third, the early Bane Nest. It's about tightening up the screws so that when you get to the mid game and Terran is starting to pressure you, you'll just be overwhelming players to retro skill level, where they'll get to your side of the map and you just have already out macroed them and you just smash them. And everything should feel really easy, but a lot of those little details, like this supply block as well, 52. So I'll say 40 Overlord. That's... You had a 36 supply block. I'm going to put these in parentheses. It seems like nitpicking because it is. This was a 52 supply block. And if you're getting supply blocked a bunch, just doing one little max out before you dive into the ladder can go a really long way. Okay, made lots of overlords.
Yeah, so I think I'm looking for Lingbane Muta. I've kind of been trying to, earlier on I was having issues where I would just try to read and then counter, and I really didn't have much of an idea of what I wanted to go for when the matchup would start, where I'd try to set more of a goal of, okay, this is the build I'm going to try to go for, this is what I'm going to try to practice with, unless I really read something pretty concrete that tells me I should do otherwise.
Yeah, I think if you want to boil it down to something really simple you can open with every time that doesn't have to change, it would probably be Carapace Ling Queen. It's the most versatile opening, where you get a quick Carapace. Oftentimes you can get it without the Bane Nest. And if threats happen, you just flood a bunch of Lings and you have a whole bunch of Queens.
Okay, I think I saw you doing that with Kessnuts.
Yeah.
Not too long ago.
Yeah, and if they're going for mech, the Carapace benefits your Roach Hydra. If they're going bio, you can go Lingbane Muta. With this build, you took the Evas, which is nice, but it was pretty late, which means you had enough money to do something, and you chose to go Spire. And if you're going Lingbane Muta, opening Carapace means that your Muta tech comes online faster, because you have an additional drone that's mining away the whole time, and you also save that 75 minerals, 100 gas. So it's not huge stuff, but I think kind of tightening up what you're going to be doing in a way that is versatile. I would recommend personally, if you're unsure, just lobbing the Overlord into the main base and making 3 Overlords. Like 4 minutes in. I think 4 minutes is a really good time where
Sacrifice it. And
you have your basic setup, you have your Ling speed, you have your queens. So if shit hits the fan, you can make Lings. So let's say you just sent it in right now.
Mhm.
You send it in, you see double factory tech lab. Maybe you don't need to make Ling Bane. You can just make queens and Lings if they send Hellions.
Mhm.
And they won't have very many of them. And you can drone to 70. Because a lot of times, droning up is the bigger focus than choosing which army units to build, especially if they have something defensive like siege tanks. Like this setup they have, you can't break it, but they're also not going to be very good at attacking you. They can't do very many Blue Flame Hellions. They could make Thors, but they don't have enough gas to have a double Thor drop for a while. So just massing queens and drones would be the response to this. So we've got our 340 Bane Nest, 4-minute sack Overlord, and build 2 to 3 Overlords, which is a super important part of this. This is going to be in bold, and then the build 2 to 3 Overlords is in red. Ooh, color-coded. Nice.
So if to do that where I pump out more queens, is there a certain number to look for where then I can slow down and start to focus on other attack?
Yeah, sure.
5, 6, 9?
9. Where you have 3 injecting that are off a hotkey.
Okay, yeah.
And the rest are on a hotkey, and they're doing the creep spread and the defense
Yeah, okay.
and stuff.
Yeah, that's what,
Heaps of queens. And this is one of those funny times when you see Marines, but it's not bio. So you can be misled. Your 2 closest overlords to the opponent, and this is why I just usually have 1, they pretty much always die to something, whether it's Marines or a Viking or whatever. And if you think about it in those terms, then sacrificing the overlord is kind of letting the overlord have a brave death, where it dies on its own terms, as opposed to just kind of hiding in a corner until the Terran goes over and kills it.
yeah.
So-
Usually the one outside of his pocket natural, that's the one on most maps I'll eventually sacrifice in. The other one I usually try to find the high ground spot, but on this map, yeah, that was just
What I do with mine is I send my first one kind of forward, and if I see a Reaper pass under it, then I'll go up and see what this is. If it's a Marine, I'll fly away. But if it's not, then you can just sit there. And my second Overlord, I just go zig, zag, zig, and then back to my natural. So that one's just dedicated for looking around at proxies, and it stays on my side of the map. So if they go Viking, I don't really get fucked up too much.
yeah.
Okay, so they're going mech. If I saw this setup from Terran, I'm just going for 70 drones and a 4th base, and then a Roach Hydra Viper max out. Would be the most efficient. Mutas are going to be hot garbage because of Thors, especially double upgraded Thors. So you're not going to get a ton of harassment done. And an extra reason why Mutas are bad against mech is because they're really gas focused in general, and a lot of times they'll be dumping their extra minerals into missile turrets. So there isn't quite the same opening. With bio, it's a very mineral hungry composition, so they're usually massing a bunch of units. And the mutas can often get more pickups, taken out drops, and that kind of stuff. Your overlord spread is good. I like that.
Yeah, I would say my vision, it's definitely not ideal. I try to get my lings out, and it's kind of like hit or miss. You know, I'll try to place 5 or 6 lings out there to get some idea of vision, something on the top, something on the sides, to if I see a drop, apart from any overlords that are out. But usually, if they end up getting taken out, I never correct it, and then I just go blind for the rest of the time, and I guess I didn't realize how blind I was on this game.
Yeah, I don't even think it's that big of a problem, especially on a map as defensive as this. I think it's about
Oh yeah, there we go.
when you're in a map that is kind of a passive defensive game, being able to just embrace the macro race and make better stuff than the opponent. Because there are a bunch of really strong Zerg compositions that you could go for, and it's not really like you always need to find the perfect counter composition to the opponent. Mainly it's about hitting that max out super fast. Because technically you could be maxed right now. If your macro hatch was earlier, your fourth base was earlier, and all that early game stuff didn't happen, you're at 200 supply, whether it's Roach Hydra or even Lingbane Muta, you can really just kill them at this point. And that's part of the beauty of moving up in League, is the players that you're facing also have a bunch of issues in their macro. So if you fix your issues, you don't necessarily have to pick the ideal counter. You just swarm them with tons of shit. And they're not going to be able to handle it regardless of whether they're going bio or mech. So I think the unit, if I could pick one unit for ZvT that you can just spam and kind of find out later, okay, it's bio, okay, it's mech, is probably the Hydra. Lingbane Muta is nice, but it ends up kind of falling on its face against Thors like this. Where you did get some pickups, and that's nice. But the follow-up to it, you don't really have a good transition right now. You have Roach Tech, and you could make Swarm Hosts. But only 5 of them. Or no, is it 10 of them? They're 100 gas each. Yeah, you can make 10 Swarm Hosts.
Yeah, so here's the point where, when I looked at it again, I didn't realize how much I had banked.
That would have entirely been fixed by the 6-minute macro hatch and the 8-minute fourth base, if you had those injected. A little challenge for you. This is a general challenge, not really specific to ZvT, so I'll put this at the top. Challenge. Every time a new base finishes, inject it immediately. That'll really change the way that your larva income looks. Say you're taking your third base here on this map, and you keep an eye on when that's finishing. You put a queen standing next to it so she can appreciate it being born, and then boom, slams and inject immediately. That bank would not exist. You would just have that much more army right now. But yeah, for ZvT, if you're looking at really good Hydras, then you can go for stuff like a few Swarm Hosts if it's mech, or you can go for Vipers or something. And if it's bio, you could mix in Lingbane and then Rush Ultra. But that way you're making small adjustments to your plan, rather than if you plan to go Lingbane Muta and they go mech, it's just kind of like, there's tons of Thors. I didn't have a good plan for this. Rip. GG rip. Nice. So you only have 3 games here. If you want, we have time to probably practice a max out. So I could just dictate for you a 200 supply max out and kind of talk you through the scouting and the spending and stuff like that. Because I think if you have that as a baseline, then it's not so much that I'm giving you a list and telling you what to do and then you get to put it together. We could just do it so you kind of know what that cohesive picture looks like. And then you have that replay also as a resource of, this is my general purpose plan. If I'm blind, I'm maxing out like this.
So this one, ZvT, this is bio. I ended up picking differently than what I was talking about in emails, but let's see, my notes felt like my push was good, delayed on macroing. I think I was really slow on drones, but then I just made a massive batch of them. I felt like I was doing good, and then yeah.
The drone scout. Hatch. Huh? Pool
I'm gonna go
gas.
pool gas. I don't know. That's kind of just what I've gotten into. Is it better if I go? So I noticed that if I go gas pool, I'm usually more prepared to get link speed right away, and I often find myself in some matches where I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that like a must? Is that something you always do, regardless of what you're gonna do?
It's not going to affect your win rate in any impactful way. You can change it, but the difference in how it shapes the game is too small for it to matter at this level. Even at a higher level, they're kind of equivalent. Like Hatch Pool Gas has a tiny bit more mineral. Hatch Gas Pool has a tiny bit earlier link speed, but in either case, it's a very similar build.
Should it just be a standard that I always get link speed as soon as I can?
I think the more important thing is to do the build the same every time. So you create your own consistency. That's more important than like which one you pick. You just need to polish the one that you pick and do it every time.
Yeah, I went super early Bane Nest on this one.
Super early Bane Nest, I think it's not that useful because of the prevalence of Hellion openers. If you're looking at it from the Terran's perspective, Hellions are the counter unit to Ling Bane Bust. And even with 2-on-1, they tend to have a lot of Marines and they can usually defend it. So if you're looking to take a third base fast like this and a bunch of tech, then your first investment after Ling Speed should be Carapace. If you're looking for a macro-oriented game. This is like a Bane Bust timing. If you're taking the Bane Nest that early, that's saying I'm going to cheese you and all in. But it seems like your intention is to macro here. Another thing you can do to scout, if you don't want to sack the Overlord, is just run 2 to 3 Lings to the ramp here, and you'll be able to tell whether it's Hellion or Marine. If it's Marine, you don't need the Roach Warren. You can just go straight into upgrades. You don't need the lair. You can get 1-1 and mass queens and stuff like that. So yeah, I think after this replay, before we get into the Protoss one, would you be up for doing a custom and we just talk through a max out?
Okay.
Probably take like 8 minutes or something, if that. Because we need to get some confidence for something that's really strong. Because it's like, I don't know what the Terran is doing, so I'm confused about what to do myself. Okay. So you're droning up. You've got your lair. You've got your... Get your upgrades. Ooh, Bane Bust. That's fun. This hit at a very effective time. Oops. Hit the base. You should hit the add-on.
Oh, stop this.
That's a good push. Can you defend? Wow. Wow! This Terran is having a bad day. Drones! Oh, you're making Lings.
Yeah, this is the period where I sit on like 29 drones for a while and then a bunch come out later. Once I realized it.
Drone, drone, drone. Production. You got a lot of work done, but now it's going to be about creating some transition. You might technically be able to bust this.
Yeah, I tried.
5 Banes, hit the add-on.
Oh, yeah, see, I went... That's what I...
Hit the add-on. Because banelings deal bonus damage to buildings, and they deal splash. So if they have 3 buildings at the top of the ramp, you just focus the middle one and it blows up the 2 on the sides. Yep, little baneling bust tip. Okay, you have like a bunch of different random tech pieces. You could make roaches, hydras, infestors, swarm hosts, banelings.
Bring them all.
Yep. But you have the economy to make Lingbane. Here's a little fun Zerg lesson. Lingbane, you can make off of like a probably 14 to 30 worker economy. Hydras, you don't really want to make until you have at least 50 drones, at least. Just by virtue of how expensive they are.
Yeah, that I started doing in order to do, when I dropped the Hydra Den, I started dropping the infestation pit just to be ready for Hive. There's a couple habits that I guess can end up not being so great just because I end up spending my money too early.
Common access to train you wrong because you're beating him. Sabotage coaching. Okay. I want to see fully saturated mineral lines every time.
Yep. Let's see.
Strict. There are no upgrades there. You have a bunch of lings and stuff. You can see that. Cool. Ooh, you have a hive. Nice. Ultra Cavern and Drone. 36 is not enough. 43 is not enough. I want to see 70. The big 7-0. Okay, you've got upgrades.
54.
Okay. 4th base and a macro hatch. Your creep spread is good. Creep spread is fine. We just need the economy. 59. We're getting there.
Yeah, I think, this push ends up taking me.
Yeah, they just have a really well-rounded composition and a good bit of supply. Hydras are kind of garbage until you get a whole bunch of them. Like, a small number of Hydras like this doesn't actually bring that much to the fight. 14 is sort of the magic number if you're against Bio, to be a pretty persistent threat without over-investing. Because if you over-invest, then you delay your Ultra Transition, which you don't want. But if you have just the right amount, then it makes your Ling Bane a lot more dangerous and increases your DPS by a good amount. So sweet. Let's practice a ZvT max out. An all-around versatile, I don't give a fuck what you think you're going for, I'm just gonna be strong Zerg. You can load any ladder map, doesn't matter. Maybe do Lost and Found. Have the maps been listed for next season yet? Can anyone link that? Just so I'm aware. Wait, what? You invited me to the game, but...
Wait.
You didn't join?
Oh, it's going. I don't know why it's taking so long. There it is.
Okay. Right-click me and put make referee. Give yourself a medium Terran AI. It's not supposed to be a challenge. I'm not trying to insult you or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go.
That's it. Okay.
Cool, so...
played it all today.
That's fine.
FYI.
That's fine. We'll take it easy. I'm not going to shout at you. Brah. A lot of players tell you 80 drones is the number. I think that's...
Good luck. Have fun.
That's maybe something you would recommend to someone who's like a Masters 1 player trying to be GM. 80 workers is harder to spend, and it's also a lot harder to defend everything. So it's kind of like the most effective coaching, drone. The most effective coaching is one that bears in mind the student that you're working with. It's not like you have a cookie cutter coaching session and you say the exact same thing to everyone.
So I run my next drone there.
That's too late. Get one of the other ones.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
And now do I build it before I build another drone?
Yes. 17. 17 is better because the queens finish at the same time.
And I usually take my second one from this for my pool.
You can just rally them to the gas. Like, rally the first egg to the gas and the second egg to be a pool. That's just a really simple, streamlined opening.
Now, okay.
Gas and then
so-
pool. Yeah.
Now, do I
Drone.
typically have been rallying to my pool, or should I just wait and...
Rally to the gas?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I rally to my gas.
Yep. You can rally all three to the gas.
That's what I've been doing. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Make it easy on yourself. 19 Overlord. I like putting this one at the Reaper Cliff, the cliff
Yeah, that's
into your
what I
main.
usually do. Sometimes I end up waiting for like 21, but okay. That's
Okay.
a good... but that's one of the things that's not always consistent for me.
And you make another drone. You can change your rally point to the natural now.
Oh.
The drone rally point.
So... Yeah, so what I've been keeping... you mean change the gather rally point so they all go there, or...
Yeah.
Shit. Okay. I was trying to get out of... Trying to talk about play. I've been trying to get out of the habit of doing that and just manually selecting them and sending them there. Although, I suppose...
I don't think you would want to do that because one of the most important things, link speed. One of the most important things about the game is being able to simplify certain steps, and your droning a base is probably the most important step that you should be able to perform without looking. And with the method that you're talking about, you have to look at the base you're droning every time you do it. Make an Overlord. And then 2 more queens. And right around here is the time when you can kind of look for opportunities to take your third base. So you can like run around with your drone looking at the natural, maybe use your lings. Sometimes the Reaper will bounce to one side or the other, you can take a base. Cool. So now with your queens, spread creep with both.
Now... Where should I do for my queen and my main?
Put it on the left side of the main. You can't see my pings, but yeah, that's good. And then inject with both. Drop an Evo. Make an Overlord. And then drone. Sweet. So get 3 of your queens on a hotkey and put them at the natural wall, because they're fighting, and then leave 1 off hotkey in the main. Make another Overlord.
Yeah.
And then 2 queens. Inject to spread creep. Carapace. Take a Bane Nest too. Wow. Okay, change the rally point to your third and inject the third. Nice job sending the queen over there. Inject. Nice. Okay, drone the shit out of your third. You should keep your lings at the natural now, just in case they yield Hellions. Maybe make another little round, just spend your larva into lings, and then go back to droning.
Should I pop another queen at the third, or should I leave one of those ones there?
No, just keep making queens. Take a layer and make queens. See how your money's spiking up a little bit? You can take 2 gases at the natural. And inject. Push creep in front of your third. Put 1 spore at each base. It's like 5 minutes. Fill the gas of your natural. Take a macro hatch in the main.
See, now I end up in the position where I'm lacking drones in my main.
Yep, so just drone like 6 up there, and then you're good. Hotkey the macro hatch and set the rally at the third. Okay, you have right around 60 workers. That's a really good time to make another big round of lings. So make a bunch of lings, make 2 more overlords, take a 4th base. Your lair is done, take +2 Carabus and Bane speed. Build a Hydra den. Spread creep in front of your third. Take 2 gas of your third. Get 3 more drones in your main. Make more lings.
Now when you say I just made 5.
Just hold down the button. It doesn't need to be
Just
precise.
max out the larva, basically, that round of larva.
Yeah, it's more about the phase of the game that you're in. You're either in a droning phase or an army phase. Then you just hold down the button.
I've noticed with the macro hatch, then do I need to focus on injecting it? Because
Not really,
don't see myself
but you
without
can.
the energy.
Yeah, you can. If you have a bunch of queen energy, just throw a couple injects on it. So now you have a bunch of money. Get your Hydra upgrades and make Hydras. Just all Hydras. Hold down the button. Nice. That's 16. That's almost the perfect amount. So now you spent your gas. Make 4 overlords, and then you're going to make lings. You don't need veins for that. You have Carapace. You could use your queens too.
Yep.
Inject the 4th while you're there.
Forgot that there was going to be something attacking me.
Infestation pit. So you have 67 drones. Just drone like 6 more at the 4th. Okay, make lings with your minerals. Make sure all your bases are injected. Get melee from your Evo chamber and add 1 Evo chamber. Inject your 4th base and push creep in front of it. Take a hive. And you can transfer a handful of drones to your 4th base.
Now, do I just take more than that'll put that below saturation?
It doesn't need to be precise, just grab like half of them or something.
Okay.
Mass lings with your money.
A lot of links.
50 lings, nice. Get ranged attack from the other Evo that's not doing anything. Get your hive. Get a spire as well.
Oh, I thought I started that.
You can add Banes and make more lings and inject your 4th.
Do you use rapid fire for the creep spread?
Yep, I started doing that after watching Cyril do it. I didn't used to do it, but if you think about it, each creep tumor is 55 HP, or no, it's 50. 50 HP, which means the Terran or Protoss or whatever has more stuff to shoot through before they get to you, which is nice. You can take 2 gases at your 4th. Keep making lings. Nice. Take a 5th base. Get a couple overseers with your army. Inject your 4th. Hotkey the 5th. Ultra Cavern, Adrenal Glands, +3 armor from the Evo, and then queue up +2 melee from the other Evo. Perfect. Make a few Overlords, mass a bunch of Banes. Okay, so this is the kind of situation where you're maxed. This is where you want to make sure your bases are all well injected. Take a trade, and then you're going to remax with Ultras. I think you made an Evo chamber instead of an Ultra Cavern.
Oh. Yep.
But, yeah, that would be basically what you would focus on next. Get a Greater Spire. And just go kill them. Go kill them, and then behind that, you can flood Lings, or ideally it would be Ultras. But yeah, that's just a strong ZvT max out. If they were to go mech, you could focus more on the ranged upgrades instead of the melee upgrades. And you could make more Hydras instead of so much Ling Bane. But aside from that, like, this is... If you do this every time, you should crush every Terran you face for, like, the next 3 leagues.
Okay.
It'll be a little bit uncomfortable for some of the games where they pressure you early and stuff, but if you get a sense for just getting a bunch of these different items on your checklist, and you don't hesitate about, should I build this or should I build that? Just max out with a ton of shit, with good upgrades, and get your hive on time, and have a good economy. And all of the MMRs will be yours. Just go kill them. Go to the production. No need to be around the bush. It's time. It's a huge army. Let's go. Now we practice the sacred art of the A move. Just A move. There you go. Okay, so some of your stuff is dying. Get Chitinous and Mass Ultras. Cool. Inject your bases. Nice. Nice. That's an all-around basic ZvT max out. Let's do the Protoss game.
Okay.
More control groups, please? No. It's not important at this point. I think a lot of people have fancy pants syndrome, where they're trying to play StarCraft and they just watched the GSL match the previous night and they saw some really fancy pants stuff. And it's like, ooh, I want a micro like that. And then you have like no economy and your army is tiny, but you're like microing the shit out of a really small number of units. And then confused as to why you lost because you microed just like Bjorn. But Bjorn also had 80 workers and 5 bases and 3-3. And a Liberator transition with ghosts and multi-drops happening. But I focus-fired Banelings. No. It's not about fancy pants. You max out in your A move. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, my hatcheries, the queens that aren't there for injecting, I have hotkeyed, and then 1 to 2 on my army, sometimes 3 hotkeys, depending on what I'm doing and if I'm going to get the opportunity to multi-prong, but all that feels pretty comfortable for me at this point. So on this one I read... Actually, I think that he just let me sit my Overlord there for a while. Yeah, according to my notes, I read a 2-base all-in, so I was basically expecting that.
This isn't really, well...
Oh yeah, so, and then that's what I thought was going to happen. He really wasn't doing much. realized he wasn't two basing, so I made a third. And then I see him attacking, but I commit with my attack with the anticipation of him pulling back to me.
Your response, I guess your mindset for how defending a 2-base all-in works is incorrect. So a 2-base all-in from Protoss usually involves somewhere between 30 and 44 probes, which you really, really, really need the third base for larva, even if you're not going to drone up to 70. It's just important to be able to make zerglings and stuff and roaches.
Just have that larva for it, regardless whether or not he's all-inning me in any fashion.
Yeah, so the only case where you don't rush a third base against Protoss is when they're either doing 1-base cannon, shield battery, robo, which I doubt they do that to you very much, or proxy 4-gate zealot. Those are the only 2 cases. In every other case, you take your third at like 30 supply. And then your main checkpoint, this is your fork in the road for ZvP, is will the toss 2-base all in? If yes, you're going for 40 to 50 drones, then making Roachling Ravager if it's Sentry, and then 50 drones of Hydraling if you see, what is it? Not Twilight. If it's like Archon stuff. I guess I should say 50 drones if they open Stargate. 50 drones of Hydraling if they open Stargate. Into 2-base, all in. This is a really common issue that a lot of Zergs have, is they identify successfully that the opponent is going to be aggressive, but they don't know how much they're supposed to drone to defend it. And a lot of times they under-drone. And the Protoss is, quote, all-inning them off of 2 bases, but the Zerg has, like, fewer workers and the same number of bases. So look at your money here. You've definitely had enough for a third almost this whole time.
Yeah. It comes in time, but obviously way later than it should have.
Since they have the gases at the natural, you could probably go for 50 drones of Hydraling with 3 bases. And basically there you just spend your gas into Hydras and then your extra minerals into Lings and Queens. And you can keep around 4 Lings just patrolling from here to there to see when the third base goes down. This is kind of similar to what we talked about against Terran, where a lot of players, if they're in Platinum, their base timings aren't necessarily things that you can really gather too much from. Because a lot of times they'll like 2-base all in themselves into a third base. And they don't really know that that's what's happening. They're just trying to not die, which I think is a noble cause. It's just not really knowing the ideal way to do that. So you've got 60 workers against 53. This is a fairly playable situation. Oh, it's a base race meme. Okay, so
I think had I pulled back right here, but I guess I didn't. I guess
it's not that bad though, because you severely wounded their economy. You know exactly what they have. So from here, you basically want to spam the most larva efficient unit you have, which is Hydra. So that's good. And anytime you fall behind in bases, because of one of your bases getting sniped, you kind of flip a switch in your head that's like, alright, I'm spamming Queens until the game is over. And that's not because Queens are the most ideal unit to make here. But if you're behind in larva, that's a way that you can extend your supply and your fighting potential without larva. Because you could be making 2 Queens at a time constantly from remaining your natural until your third is done. And you could take your 4th base. And Queens are pretty good against almost every unit in the Protoss composition except for the Zealots. Yeah, this has been like too much tech off of too few bases. So we got the 30 supply third base. I'll give you some other benchmarks here. We've got a 4 minute to 430 layer plus Roach Warren if you want to be safe. Single Evo plus Hydroden when layer is done. We'll say Hydroden or Roach speed, kind of depends. And then inject third as soon as it's done. You're still working with the 8 minute fourth base. It could even go a little bit earlier, because like I said, Protoss doesn't as often have a specific plan to deny a fourth base. So you can take the fourth instead of the macro hatch. Broodlord is your killing unit against Protoss, like 7 Broodlords. Whether they're going for this composition or that composition, like you're going Lingbane Hydra into Ultra against Bio. Against Protoss, the most sturdy max out that you don't really care what they're going for is probably something like Queen Hydra Broodlord. Queen Hydra Broodlord, you can push their bases, you can beat their armies, as long as you have Overseers and stuff. It's good against ground, and if they do go air, the Hydras can often overwhelm. And then the Broodlords can just gradually push, and they can take care of the High Templar and stuff. So that would probably be my recommended max out for killing them. So you can use Roach Hydra, Lurker, or Hydra Lingbane to hit 200 supply while going 5+ Spire for Broodlords.
So if I'm going Hydra Lingbane, do I focus on... I would focus on the Carapace first and then melee, right? Do I just ignore the range attack until I have plenty of money to pay for it?
Carapace isn't as good against Protoss as it is against Terran, and that's mainly because they don't shoot as fast. You get value from your armor upgrades every time you receive damage, and Bio-Terran units shoot, I think, the fastest in the game. They just shoot ridiculously fast, and Cyclones shoot really fast as well. Protoss units tend to hit slower and harder, so the armor upgrade doesn't really do as much for you unless it's Carriers. Carrier is the exception to that rule, because they have 8 little baby units inside of the main one that all shoot really fast.
The melee upgrade transfers over to my Broodlings, though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. Yeah, which is part of why melee is good. If you're looking for the upgrade that's going to allow you to take direct fights the best, it's +1 ranged, +2 ranged. And for the upgrades that are going to allow you to kind of wound the Protoss economy, it would be the melee upgrades. With just Lingbane Harass. Like, look at this base. Look at this base. Did you see the Gemini clip of the Banelings?
Yeah.
Yeah, this base is fucked. You get like 10 Banes. The 2 cannons are not going to kill 10 Banelings. Maybe they'll kill like 4 of them. And then it's going to be a Captain Look, and then you kill like 50 probes.
I didn't see that. That was so...
This is a really common thing, though. So if you want a really simple game plan for versus Protoss, you make Hydras and Queens to not die on creep. You just have a ton of Hydra Queen. It's really hard for Protoss to kill you. You make Banes on the side of the map, and you just run them into an exposed base over and over again as you're teching to Broodlord. That's probably the simplest all-around game plan that allows you to both attack and survive while you're teching up to Broodlord, which is your finishing push. But yeah, now this game is kind of a standoff. Both of you have a messed up economy. Carapace upgrades are good on the Spire once you have your Greater Spire. I would prioritize getting the Greater Spire before upgrading. And you want to take your Hive and your Spire at the same time, so that when your Hive finishes, your Spire is done and you can just insta Greater Spire.
Okay.
Did I say 7 Broods? 7 Broods is good. It's enough to achieve the effect of having Broodlords with your army. If you go for too many, sometimes it compromises the strength of your ground forces.
Was there an ideal or a good set timing for the spire itself, or is it?
You always time it with the hive.
Okay.
Because
So
they
once-
take about the same amount of time to build. Now they just have tons of Archons. This army is garbage against Broodlords. 2 Void Rays cannot deal with Broodlords. But you don't have the critical mass.
Yeah, it was way too late on the Broodlords.
Yeah. Against that many Archons, you could probably up your Broodlord count to like 10. And then having a bunch of Queens and stuff, you'd be in a really good spot. The initial hit with the Broodlord is an air attack, which benefits from the air attack upgrades, yes. And then it becomes melee once the Broodling is on the ground. That is correct. Correcto. Sweet, so that was all the games. Did you have other questions?
No, I mean, I try my best to name and save my games and keep watching them, but I was just trying to go with the approach of not overwhelming myself with too many notes and too much to practice on.
Yeah, I think to boil it down, the main take home from this session is building your own really sturdy max out. That's kind of like you putting your stake in the ground and saying, I don't care what these platinum and diamond people are doing. I'm just going to get to 200 supply really fast with something that's generally speaking strong. And I'm not scared of what you're going to be doing. Because there's a lot of that syndrome of like gold and platinum players where they're scouting their opponents and getting confused because what their opponent is doing does not make sense.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah. So yeah, I got the notes all typed up here for you. Be careful with the supply management. Inject your base as soon as it's done. Super important. Macro hatch at 6 minutes, 4th base at 8 minutes. And you always take a 3rd base, unless it's a proxy for something, barracks or gateway.
So once you get to that 4th, anything additional after that is just in terms of the length of the game and mining and situations like that, right? Or is 4, I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but 3 for being able to have all the larvae, then trying to get that 4th to really start to establish the map control. But everything after that, is it just a matter of when I need it or when?
Right, so I think what you're asking is what is the purpose of the 4th base? The purpose of the 4th base is to maintain a 70 worker economy because your main mine's out around that time.
Okay.
Which means I want to keep a good economy going, so I need another place to mine from. And the other point is I need more gas geysers to mine from because hive tech units cost a lot more gas than lair tech and hash tech units. So you can't actually afford a big Broodlord army with a bunch of hydras off of 3 bases. You need the 4th base of gas. So that's the other key point for it. The 5th base as well is going to allow you to enrich that even further. So it's like the more bases you take of gas, the more high-tech units you build, which all costs more gas.
Okay.
Sweet. Well, cool. Always good working with you, dude.
Yeah, thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
Crush them. Yeah, you should be able to shoot out of platinum really fast. We'll aim for like diamond too. How's that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yep. But it's just a race against yourself, right?
Yeah.
The opponents are just going to be doing some random shit to try and throw you off.
Yeah, like you were saying about scouting and them not really knowing what they're doing. It feels like it's one in every, 5 or 6 that I scout somebody that then seems like they're doing what they intended to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
go get him, dude.
Awesome.
Thanks for
Thank
supporting
you.
the stream.
Yeah.
Memes. All right, Mr. TBO Baggins. He's good to coach. Comes prepared. He's got his own questions.